Perhaps Hugo Bross has a point. Hugo Bross says the reason South Africa didn't perform well in this AFCON 2025 is because they lacked players that play in Europe. They lacked that international experience where they're playing games at the highest level of football, with the highest intensity, with the highest pressure. They used to those sort of games. And in Bafana Bafana, we do not have them. You know what? Men lie, women lie, but numbers don't lie. And if you look at the stats, they say that in 2023, when Ivory Coast won it, from 27 selected players, 21 were Europe based. So 78%, nearly 80% of those players, 80% of the squad is playing their football in Europe. In 2021, when Senegal won it, they had 27 out of 28 players that they selected playing in Europe. That's 96%. Only one player did not play in Europe. They won it. In 2019, when Algeria won it, they had 17 out of 23 players playing in Europe. That's 74%. And in 2017, when Cameroon won it, they had 19 out of 23 players playing in Europe. That's 83%. That side was also managed by this coach, Hugo Bross. So he had majority, 83% of his players playing in Europe, and that led him to success. In 2015, when Ivory Coast won it, they had 21 out of 23 players playing in Europe. That's 91%. It's very clear that there's a trend here, that the sides that go on to win the AFCON tournament, they are made up of mostly European-based players, at least about 75%. We do not have that in Bafana Bafana. Bafana Bafana definitely lacks in their squad European-based players, but that's also because Hugo Bross did not base his squad selection on that. There are other players that he snubbed that are still playing in Europe, but they were not selected. However, in his 25-man squad, 6 out of 25 are playing their football in Europe, to be specific. That's Ngezana, that's Kabini, that's Smith, that's Sithole, that's Foster, and that's Campbell. So only 24% of the squad plays their football in Europe, right? And if you look at out of those 6 players, only Ngezana, Foster, and Sithole were starters for this Bafana Bafana squad, right? They started most games. Sithole dropped in the final game against Cameroon, and also Gambini came in the last game against Cameroon. So you only have at all times just about 3 players in the starting 11 playing their football in Europe. And to that, Hugo Bross is saying was a little bit of a disadvantage. You know what? He may have a point. Do I accept this though as an excuse? I don't really. Why? Because in the last campaign, he was talking about the fact that we need to believe in ourselves and in our local football in the PSL. He talked about it so far that he actually only called up 2 players out of the 23 in the last campaign who played their football in Europe. It was basically Sithole and Mayambela. Only 2 out of the 23 that he called up. That's 9%. Who made the squad for last AFCON where Bafana Bafana finished 3rd. They were playing their football in Europe. So that was a pretty successful campaign, right, for Bafana Bafana. I think we can all agree that when no one expected them to even get out of the group, Bafana Bafana went on and finished 3rd. That's a successful campaign, and it did not have Europe-based players. Only 2 out of 23, like I said, that made up the squad. Only 9%. So if that was not a conversation then, why is it a conversation now? We need consistency. If he was not saying it's a disadvantage 2 years ago when Bafana Bafana was doing well, why is he saying it now when Bafana Bafana are not doing well? I just do not really understand that. Also, it does not mean that because you play in Europe, you automatically a better player than some of the players that are playing their football in South Africa. I'll give you an example with Kabini. He started the last game where Aubrey Mudiba was dropped. And I can say for a fact, Aubrey Mudiba is a better player, better left back than Kabini. Just because Kabini plays in Europe does not mean he's a better player than Aubrey Mudiba. He got chances, he wasted them, he was not quality on the ball, and I think Mudiba would have done better when he was in those positions. And we know that when he came on, he got the assist for Mahopa after he was subbed. So Mudiba on the ball, his on-the-ball ability is much better than Kabini. There are some people that will argue that just because Lyle Foster plays in Burnley, it does not mean he's better than Evidence Mahopa of Orlando Pirates or Ikram Reyners of Mamelodi Sundowns, who was not even called up in the squad. And I'm one of those people who believes that Ikram Reyners is one of the best players, best strikers in the world. He just happens to play in South Africa. That's where he plays his trade. It's not necessarily a disadvantage. I think if you play him, he scores. We saw that in the Club World Cup, where he got 2 in 3 games against the best, right? Against Borussia Dortmund, which in the year before finished in the UEFA Champions League final. Ikram Reina scored. So for me, this is not an excuse that I'm able to really take and believe. I think much more analysis has to be done as to why we didn't do well on the pitch. What were the tactics? Something like our formation, our defensive combinations, our starting 11 and our subs, which I think Hugo Bross didn't get right in majority of the games. I think that's what he needs to focus on. Our defense was leaky. South Africa conceded in every single game. Our defending of set pieces was weird. South Africa conceded 3 goals from set pieces, through mistakes, through errors. There was even an own goal in there. So for me, there's a lot to analyze before we can even just jump to other, let's say, qualitative factors about players not being playing in Europe is a disadvantage. I think there's times where Hugo Bross could have been braver and actually showed belief in his squad by not being defensive and playing his normal game. Play your normal game. Don't be afraid to go toe-to-toe with some of the teams who are not even at their best. Egypt is not at their best, but he went with 3 defensive midfielders. Cameroon is not at their best and went with 5 defenders, a back 5 and 2 defensive midfielders. So for me, that's not playing Senegal. That's not playing Morocco. If you were playing those teams, I would understand you being a little bit cautious, but there was no need for me to be cautious when Cameroon and Egypt themselves did not have great tournaments last year and they got knocked out in the group stages because some teams were not afraid to go toe-to-toe with them. Hugo Bross needs to be braver when he's setting up his team. He needs to sometimes remove his defensive mindedness, his caution, or his fear. There's times where you can give respect to the opponent, but there's times where you should not show fear. And in a tournament like this, he should have not showed fear. And for me, that is some of the things that went wrong with Bafana Bafana. This is part 4 of what happened or what went wrong with Bafana Bafana. Catch up on the other videos that I made. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Hi guys, this is Itumeleng Kune. I'm with KG Dato. Catch him on YouTube channel. We are football. Please. Our football channel.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's match day.
We'll be there.
Do you care though?
We'll be there.